Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now the fun part about history is its ambiguity. We never really know when an event starts or when it ends, and this could be applied to this century. We never really know when World War I ends and when World War II starts. I mean, yeah, sure, the fighting ended in 1918, but there were so many rippling effects that happened right after the fighting. And in terms of World War II, the fighting did start in the 30s, but there were so many underlying causes that contributed to it far beyond the 30s. Now, if it were up to me, the main point of distinction that I would draw is the introduction of the Treaty of Versailles. And in this video, we're going to be talking all about it. So whether you're cooked for your next test or cooked for the exam in general, let me try and help you. Now in the last video, we described the aims and the hopes these people had when creating the Treaty of Versailles. But now we're going to be talking about pure facts. And if there's any one document you need to memorize for your exam, it's gotta be the Treaty of Versailles. You need to memorize that thing front to back, because it's almost 75% guaranteed you're gonna get asked a question on this. And there's a lot to memorize in my opinion. They've kind of made it easier on us because before 2024, you had to memorize all of these 8 other treaties as well. But that just means you're gonna get more specific questions on the Treaty of Versailles. But don't worry though, I have a pretty nice acronym for you to memorize. It's gargle. I know that sounds really weird, but stay with me. Now the first letter here is the guilt clause, and this is pretty important, so listen up. The guilt clause essentially stated that Germany was to be blamed for the entirety of World War I. They basically told them that you started it, you caused all of the damages, and you tore Europe apart to place all of that burden on the back of Germany. But there is a point to be made that they did lose the war. They should definitely face some humiliation. And although that is true, it is far more significant beyond just that. It basically ruined Germany's reputation, both from the inside and on the outside. People outside of Germany viewed it with disgust, and the people inside Germany were ashamed. They had their prides broken by this guilt clause. I mean, to go from one of the most biggest military powers to get metaphorically shat on, I mean, it's gotta hurt. But the second point here, A, stands for German arms. And if I haven't emphasized this enough throughout the past 2 videos, Germany's army was huge. And that's why a lot of the victors at the Paris Peace Conference were in a scramble to try and figure out how to reduce Germany's military influence. We looked at the last video, the single commonality between the big 3 was to reduce German military. So obviously, they're going to take a huge blow on this one. Firstly, their standing army was reduced to only around 100,000 people. Also, in terms of their navy, they were restricted to only 6 battleships and no submarines whatsoever. Additionally, they had no tanks and no air force at all. It was completely banned. They also banned conscription, which means if Germany wanted soldiers, they had to come there voluntarily. Germany could not pick and draft soldiers without their consent. And after the monstrosity of World War I, it was unlikely that any other people would voluntarily go to the army. And this was evidently pretty bad, and the effects of this will be explored in the next video. Alright, so this next clause, the R here, stands for reparations. And this is also a pretty huge one, so strap in. Germany had to pay a whopping 6.6 billion pounds.
Oh my god!
To put into context the absurdity of this amount, that's over 200 billion pounds today. And realize under Clemenceau's influence, that amount could have been so much greater. It would take until 2010 to have their entire reparations paid off. And as fate would have it, the not so great Nazis would use this and the guilt clause to vilify the Allied powers and to vilify the Treaty of Versailles in and of itself. Out of all the other clauses, this next one has the most to memorize. So get a paper down, because this is a lot of information. The G here stands for German territories. By the turn of World War I, Germany had so much land. I mean, they had land outside of Europe, like in Africa, and they just conveniently had so much of Central Europe as well. And because of the TOV, Germany had to give a lot of its land away. And here are the most important points you should know. Firstly, The Rhineland became completely demilitarized, which meant no soldiers from France or Germany could ever enter into that border. Secondly, Germany's Saarlands and overseas territories were given away. Germany's Saarland were to be governed by the newly established League of Nations, and Germany's overseas territories were given away to Britain and France, expanding upon their already just insanely humongous empire. And when you gain that much land from the Treaty of Versailles, Wilson, out of everyone, is evidently going to be quite pissed at that, and those type of reactions will also be explored in the next video. This next point is just going to be a bunch of facts. Firstly, Alsace and Lorraine, a heavily disputed territory, was given back to France. Also, Danzig, it became a free city. Also, parts of West Prussia and Upper Silesia were given back to Poland's reconstruction. Also, and finally, parts of Germany's lands were given and redistributed to create new states like Czechoslovakia, Lithuania, and Latvia. And the last point that you need to know about the land is that Germany was completely cut off from any sea access. Trade restrictions were put in such that all of Germany's useful ports were either taken away from them completely or given to Poland. That means Germany couldn't access any valuable trade, especially that from Britain. Alright, sorry, that was way too much, but this last point is pretty simple. The last clause of the Treaty of Versailles is the establishment of the League of Nations. So basically, the Treaty of Versailles mandated that the League of Nations were to be formed from countries all over the globe and to be governed by Wilson's 14 points to ensure everlasting peace and prosperity. Also, it would consist of 4 main members: Great Britain, France, Italy, and Japan. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about the Treaty of Versailles. But make sure you at least know or have a rough idea of almost all of these, because you're likely to get asked a question on specific clauses or specific areas of the treaty. So you at least need to know a rough idea about what it is. But yeah, the next video we're going to be discussing about who was really satisfied or not satisfied with the Treaty of Versailles. But except for that, I'll see you next time.